If you think that's all there is what we can define through our current language, it's an arrogant place to be, a naive place to be. You guys know I've done some drugs, some jungle drugs in the jungle, out of the jungle, some not jungle drugs, and I'm open about that. I'm open and honest about my experiences. And I had this experience once upon a time. It was my third night doing ayahuasca, my first ceremony. So first night I'd had a really beautiful experience, a very feminine experience. I'd kind of come in touch with this like divine mother. Like she just snuggled me and loved on me. And I needed that, man. I needed that. I needed to just be spooned out by the divine mother. It was just something else. The second night I had a very masculine experience and it was very dark. Fought a demon with my dad, my brother were there. It was wild. But the third night, I had an experience with what I call Christ consciousness. It was, to this day, and I've had some really beautiful ayahuasca experiences, but it was something else. And we were laughing and we were looking over the world and looking over history and just like could zoom out of everything. Just communicate in a way that was special. It was something else. And I felt like I had like access to all this knowledge, but it was like sand on a beach. Like there was just so much. And all I could do was just grab a little fistful and take it back with me. That's what it felt like. And as I was coming out of this experience, and when it's kind of this like, sometimes you just snap out of it. That second night, I went from getting the message and just right back to normal everyday consciousness. It was very abrupt. And my first time ever having like a true psychedelic experience on that level. I'd done a little bit of mushrooms before that and smoked a little bit of DMT once and had like a mild experience that was really fun that I can talk about some other time. But it was my first real deep experience, like really losing my physical body and just being like in that state kind of beyond the veil there. I remember coming out of it in this like slow, like laughing and smiling, just feeling so light. And I remember laughing at myself because I was like, I'm going to have to try to explain this to people, which I didn't have any obligation to, but at that time I was already podcasting. So it was like, I'm going to have to, no, I wasn't podcasting yet, but I had people that wanted to know about this experience, right? I was like, I have to explain this in words. I have to try to explain this with words. And that's so hard to do. How can I explain this experience with words, with the English language? Fast forward, 10 years now, I guess it's been. And I was I'm reading this book on Norse mythology or Greek mythology. I remember it was one on Greek mythology. And the author was going through all the different words that they had for love. They didn't have one word as love. They had a word for familial love. They had a love for romantic love. They had a word for love for your children. They had these different words for love. And I was like, wow, how much different would our reality be? Because our language is kind of the framework for our thought. We do think in our language, right? So if you control language, you can control thought. That's something straight out of 1984, right? But really, the word love tripped me out. And then I saw Cameron Hanes say this thing about like men want to be respected and women want to be loved, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And he's a great bow hunter and has a crazy work ethic and is a hell of a runner and is good at a lot of things, but that just missed the mark for me. I was like, love isn't that simple. We have this one word. There's one word to describe this feeling. I've got one word to describe how I feel for my family and my wife, and my daughter and my friends, but they're all different. It's just love. So this language is so rudimentary and so clunky. We don't think about it that way. English is kind of a bunk language. If you listen to other people speak, it's like, wow, that sounds way cooler than how we talk. But I think there is this closed offness, right, that we don't have access to if we only view the world through the language we have access to, right? It's just like, it just doesn't do it. And also, if you think that that's all we can get, if you think that's all there is what we can define through our current language, if you think that's it, that's an arrogant place to be, a naive place to be. And there's nothing worse than being arrogant and naive at the same time. Think about that. Just the variation and how big the word love is and how poor of a job it does at describing those feelings. And then extrapolate that out on the rest of the way we speak and the rest of the way we communicate. I believe that in past times, there was other ways. There were other ways to articulate our feelings, other ways of communicating that may have been a little more broad, that we don't have access to anymore. And that's okay. Every iteration of our reality as pros and cons. But can we really acknowledge our presence bias, right? This idea that we live in the best time ever. We don't know that. Not this. We don't need that arrogance and naivete to believe that what we do now and how we operate is the best it's ever been. That doesn't serve us in any way. There's so much more than what we have access to through our current tools, especially language.